So I'll not be using an actual presentation. So instead of having a presentation, I'll be sharing some websites which can help you even as you are trying to work on your course assignment. So today I want to address the issue of PHP, MySQL in a functional website. So let me share my screen. So in our last class, we saw this part where you can work with XAMPP to simulate a hosting environment. And we said one thing about XAMPP is you usually have the control panel, you open it. So when you open the control panel, just wait for mine to open. So when you open the control panel, you have to start the Apache and MySQL. We said when the Apache is running, you are able to interpret PHP code online by doing something like this. You store a PHP file in the folder htdocs. For example, this folder here I had called PHP. If it has a file, I can go to the browser and type localhost /PHP, and that file is able to open on the screen. So that's something we had shown. Now in that session also, I had talked about if you go to localhost, the application comes with PHPMyAdmin. This part here comes with PHPMyAdmin, where PHPMyAdmin is a user interface for managing databases. And the database you'll be managing using that user interface is MySQL. Because we are using XAMPP, XAMPP uses the word MySQL here, but in reality, the database being used here is called MariaDB. So you might hear this word in your research. So the database being used there is simply called MariaDB. You might do your research about it, but it has all the characteristics of MySQL. So when you talk about SQL databases, there is one key characteristic. In our class last time, I had shown you how to create a database manually, where you come here and click on new and create that database. Then I had shown you how to create a table into that database. In a PHP environment, you will find most of the time you don't create these manually. You might use a script to create it. Even when the table has been created, you might find that you need a script to insert data into the table which has been created. So at today's session, I want to concentrate on this idea of, I have a database. Either the database I've created myself manually, or it has been created by a script. Then how do I add data? And then when I've added data into that file, how do I retrieve it to appear on my website? So that's what I'll be concentrating on, and I'll make sure that I make it as brief as possible for ease of understanding. In the website you're creating for the project, there is a place maybe you might need somebody to register, or there is a place you might need somebody to buy a product. In reality, when a person registers, that data is stored in a database somewhere. When a person buys a product, that information is stored in a database somewhere. Most of the time also, when you are saying you are creating stock for your environment, that stock is stored somewhere in your database. And I'll use this session to demonstrate how that storing is done. And I hope by the end of this, it will clarify some of the questions some of you have when you are using OpenCat. Now, PHP is a very broad programming language. So some people have gone ahead and developed something in PHP we call frameworks. And I'm sure as you are watching, you might have seen what I searched there. I Googled PHP frameworks. Yeah. So a PHP framework is simply, we can call it an app, which contains some of the basic code you need in creating a fully functional software. The most popular as of now of these frameworks is Laravel. Some of you do research, probably you've encountered this name. So it's a PHP framework. Now, for you to work with any of these, you need to have basic knowledge of PHP. Actually, they tend to say advanced. They tend to say intermediate knowledge of PHP. So in other words, you need to have learned what I've taught so far, plus some additional parts of PHP, which we call PHP object-oriented programming. So when you talk about object-oriented programming, is where we introduce the idea of creating classes. Now, when you talk about a class, it is simply a PHP code. Now, in our session, I'll not go to this part here. So it's an advanced topic, so I don't have to start talking about it now. What I want to do is first introduce the basic. So most of these classes are files created in PHP and stored somewhere, and you can use them in other files. So for our session, I want to touch on PHP MySQL. And in PHP MySQL, we want to first of all look at the basic thing we call inserting. How can I add data from a PHP script, in this case a form, and insert that data into a database? And for this demonstration, I'll doing everything from scratch so that you can see how simple it is. So here, what I'll do, I'll go to my folder, htdocs, and I'll create a new folder. In case you have a question for what I'm doing, feel free to interrupt me and ask. So I'll create a new folder here. I'll call it PHP form demo. Don't worry about my name. The name is random. I've just picked it now. So PHP form demo, because I want to use it just to demonstrate the idea of working with maybe a form in PHP. So I'll open this with code. So it is still loading. So the folder is the folder I've created, as we've seen there, it's blank. Yeah. Now this folder can represent your actual website. I know some of you have already created websites in HTML. So it can represent your actual website. Now, if there are files here, you can edit them in VS Code. For example, I'll create one of the first file I create is an HTML file. I will call it, so I'll create a file here. I'll call it index.html. It's an HTML file, so I'll call it .html for the first part of the demonstration. Then this file, I will add the basic HTML code like we usually do in our other classes. Then to speed up the design, I'll copy paste content from the internet. So this is what I'll do. I'll go to the browser and search basic register form. So this is what I've done. I've just gone to the browser to search for basic register form in HTML. I can add with CSS maybe. So that maybe we can get something which is already formatted with CSS. It is my understanding that in other class, which was being taught, you learned a bit of forms in HTML. I think that's something you learned in a different class. So I'll just copy this code so that I can use it for this demonstration. So I've just Googled, having picked a random page for this demonstration. So I'll copy paste this. I'll start from the form downwards. I'll also modify and remove some of the unnecessary content. I've copied up to form. I'll add that here so that you can see what is happening in our code. I will add that here. Now, I know in one of our classes, I had shown you how to add extensions. There's an extension I like to add here so that you can also, maybe you can add it for your app. The extension is called Prettier. Let me see. This one. I'm adding this here. The reason I'm adding this extension is because it helps me in formatting code. You'll see the effect in a few minutes. Yeah. So I'm adding this plugin to my VS Code. Now, this will be removing extra spaces and creating some spaces where necessary for me, instead of me going to do the modification every time. So this one has installed. So if I go now back to my code here, you can see the way the code is not so well spaced. If I save, you'll notice that the application will be adjusting some of the spaces as we move on. It will be creating some better organization for my code when the plugin picks up. So I've added this. It's my form. And inside the form, I have some basic labels. Let's see what they look up. Let's see what they look like in the browser. So I will go back to my browser, localhost. I called that folder PHP form demo. So I want to change this to PHP form demo. Now, this is the form. Currently, it is not styled. Yeah? So if I go back to the website where I got it, I left out the CSS. For this one, the creator used an internal style. So I'll still copy the internal style. Now the CSS is something we have learned in other classes. So I'm sure as I mentioned that it's an internal style, you know what I'm talking about. So I'll add it here. If I save the changes and go and reload that page, should be now styles, should be styled. So this is a basic registration form. Now, because I'm just getting started for this demonstration, I'll remove some items which I feel are not that necessary. But as we are getting started, this is the form I will use to demonstrate how to get data from a form and then insert it into a database in your page, whichever website you create. So this is actually very practical in most sites. I remember some of you were asking me something about that. So for you to be able to store maybe login details, for you to be able to retrieve them, you need to have a way to connect your file, and you need to have a way to connect this file and the database. Like in our case, we have this as our database, which is in PHP-MyAdmin, that's where we have our databases. So for this class, I'll create a database, that demonstration. So I'll create a new database. So I've clicked on new. I want to create a new database. If the database was already created, I would not have needed it. So I'll call it PHP form demo. Again, the name is my own choice, so you can use any name there. Then inside this database, I'm going to create a new table. I'll create this with just 3 rows for simplicity. So I'll call it reg underscore form. This short form for registration form, then I'll just create. So actually I've added 4, but still okay. So the first one, based on what we saw last time, this one will be an ID. When we are creating the forms, we tend to create them to match up to what you need to be capturing here. Like I'll be capturing first name, I'll be capturing middle name, and I'll be capturing last name, course, phone. But for today's demonstration, to reduce what I'm creating, I'll only capture the first 3. So that's what I should create here. Let me call it F name. I've used short forms. F name is first name, M name is middle name, then L name is last name. And all these are using text. So text is variable character. Even this one is variable character. This one I might not need, I'll remove it later. Variable character of 20. So I've created that form for that table with 4 columns. I'll remove the last one. So to remove, you usually use the option drop. So I'll just click on drop here. So that I'll capture only 3. So from this form, I want to get the first name, last name, and middle name. Then insert it into this table. Then later I'll give a quick demo on how to retrieve it. So when you are working with PHP, there are several ways of inserting data into a database. So the most obvious, as you'll hear, the most common of these methods is what we call the MySQLi connect. Something called the MySQLi connect. So you'll hear somebody saying you need to have a MySQLi connection for that. So the first step, if you want to do data insertion, is you need to, first of all, connect the file, like in this case, this form, and the database itself. So how do we go about that? Now, for that to work, we need a PHP script. That is why in our class, if you add an HTML file like this one, which is really working here, if I go to the browser, that HTML file is working. It is this one here. Is this one working here? If you add a file like this, you will need to convert it to a PHP file. So I'll convert, the way you convert this to a PHP file, you can do this in two ways. The easiest is you can come back here and rename. If you're using VS Code, yeah, you can rename, and in the end, you convert it to .php. It will still work, yeah? The other one is where you can decide when it is open, you click on File, Save As, but when you are typing the name, you choose .php. Mine, I prefer this shortcut because I know I will not lose any data. The only thing which will happen is the file will be converted from being an HTML file to a PHP file. So there's a point I want to emphasize there, and that is when you want to start maybe having an active form which can store data into your database, the file itself needs to be a .php file, not a .html file, whichever file. The only part which matters is that end. Then you can start adding PHP code into your file. The PHP code can be added anywhere in your file. You can even add it above here at the top. And that's what I want to do for this demonstration. You can add the PHP code at the top here. And again, to save time, I will not type everything. I'll copy paste some of this, then I'll explain what the lines do. So there's a website I tend to recommend for this part of my class. The website is called Tutorial Republic. Tutorial Republic. They have quite a number of tutorials here. So the one they are talking about right now is PHP. So they have a PHP tutorial, PHP 7 or even earlier versions. Then on the side here, you can see different menus. You can see different menus. Like the topic I'm introducing now is, if I have a PHP file, how can I connect it to my database? If you go to this website, there is an explanation here. You can use what we call MySQL Connect. You can use MySQL Connect. And just know this, MySQL Connect has been deprecated, where now we have what is called MySQLi Connect, which is more secure. And this is how it works. This is how it works. So to connect a database with your code, you need to specify some few parts of the code. One of them, you need to specify the host name. I'll demonstrate that next. You need to specify the username. The username is the account which is used to access your database, the password, then the database name. So let me copy this line as it is here. Then I'll come back here and create a PHP tag. Then I'll close it. Then in there, that's where I'll paste the code I've copied. So this, from our class, we know the first part there is, that's a variable. Yeah, that's a variable which you define. It can be any name. Yeah? Like I can call mine, I prefer that name. I can call mine connect, the short form for connection. Yeah? Just know that this variable name is you chooses the name you want. Yeah? The only one which you cannot change is this part. In our last class, in the cheat sheet, I showed you we have some functions. One of them there was MySQLi Connect function. They are database connection files which are already built for PHP. And these functions require you to provide data as follows. The first one is hostname. In most hosting environments, this is usually local host. Depending on where you're hosting your website, sometimes you can type even an actual IP address here. But the most commonly name used there is localhost. Localhost means the same location as the file. Like in our case, the folder htdocs is our localhost. So it will be okay if I just type localhost. Then here is the username. The username is that account which has access to your database. Usually have an account which has access to your database. By default, if you are working with XAMPP, the default username is called root. The default is root. Yeah. Then the default password is usually blank. So we put a double quotation mark. We put a double quotation mark. Now, if you set up a database for a password for root, that password should be added here. Now, in different hosting environment, let's say you're hosting with an hosting company, they usually give you a password they usually give you this username and this password. So it is you to know to ask for that for your connection. Then the database is the database name you create. In my example, I've created a database here called PHP form demo, this one. So that is the name I'm going to type there. PHP form demo. Now, this script is in its basic design. We have different designs of that script, as you might see. I'm using Tutorials Republic for almost every demonstration. So you can do this using what we call the procedural design, or you can use what is called OOP design. Like I said, there's that topic which I'll not get into detail for now. Now, when you've made the connection, we tend to recommend in your application here, you check for errors. Now, this will try to connect. So this script will try to connect. Yeah. Then here, you need to check whether the connection is successful or not. And the way we do that is by introducing an if statement. So I'll copy this as it is. I'll explain what each one of them is. So this one is where you're trying to connect the first thing. Yeah? Then this second one here is where you want to check whether this, so remember we are connecting to this database. This one will try to connect, and if there is an error, that error should be notified here. I'm sure some of you probably have already noticed. I had renamed my variable here from being linked to Konya, which is also change it here. So this is that variable name. So we're simply saying if the variable con returns a false, the opposite of a false is true. Yeah? So if it returns a false, we need this to stop connecting and return an error, which is saying will not connect to database. Then give us maybe a better explanation of that error. That's why we are getting this line here. But if the connection is successful, we want this application to return this statement. Let's see whether this has worked. So I'll save the changes. Remember, I've typed my database name, I've typed my user, and I've typed my host, which I've said, because we are using XAMPP, it's usually localhost, and the password usually, the username usually root. Let's see whether it will give me what I wanted. So I'll go back to that. Then I'll reload this. So if the connection is successful, I'm supposed to get this. So here it is saying, connect successfully. Then host information, it is saying localhost via TCP/IP. Let me make a deliberate mistake so that we can see that sometimes if the connection is not right, it will return an error. So this is what I'll do. Instead of typing root, I'll add an S there, roots. Then I'll save the changes. Then I'll go and reload. I'm supposed to get an error. So these are type of an error you're most likely going to get in your databases. So here it is saying, unquote MySQL exception. So it is saying access denied for user. So this user is the one who has a problem. So user roots at localhost. So in simple terms, this user does not exist because we all know what has happened here. Using password, no, it's simply saying that this user was trying to connect without a password and they have been denied that access. So I'll remove that. I'll change it from being roots to just being root. Now, just to a pointer, most of you are getting some assignment in OpenCat. Now, OpenCat has a script, which is where you have to specify the username, the name of the database, and even the host environment. We call that environment file. I'm sure you might have seen it somewhere, either the environment file or the config file. You might have seen it somewhere. Only that it's already done for you. Your work is just to know where is it located and how is it with the connection. Also, they've created the scripts for returning different types of errors. These errors can be customized, read something more meaningful to the person who is trying to use it. So I've renamed that. Let me make a mistake and the database name. So I'll add a letter there. I've just added an H. Let's see what type of error we are most likely going to get. So this time it is saying, and got, then it is saying unknown database. Yeah, you can see how clear it is. Yeah, this one I think is a bit straightforward. It is saying unknown database. So it means this database is not known. So anytime you see that, you just know this, either the database has not been created or there is an error. So I'll remove that H I had added, then I'll save the changes. Other times you might have an issue with password. Let me type some gibberish here for the password, then I'll save the changes. Let's see what error we'll get if the issue is the password. So it's saying access denied. Here it is saying using password, yes. So these are very difficult error to troubleshoot based on my experience. It is simply saying this user cannot connect using the password provided. So this user cannot connect using the password provided. As long as the issue here is not the, here you usually look for either the username is okay or whether the password is correct. So that's something you'll get used to when you are dealing with databases. So I'll remove that password. I put that, like we said, the connection does not have password. So I think up to that, we've understood what this script does. It's up to them. It's a very basic script. Now, in one of our classes, I had said, this file can be created in the same location or outside. I want to show you how we can transfer this file outside and it still works. Yeah? So this is what I'll do. I'll create another file here. Actually, instead of creating a file, let me create a folder. I'll call it, let me call it admin, because I know this is something most of you are using for your other applications. So I've called this data folder admin. Then in that folder admin, I'll create a file. I'll call my file connection.php. So I've created that file and call it connection.php. Yeah. So just now I've created a folder, and inside that folder I've created a file. So you can have as many files in this folder as possible. You can even have other folders in that location. Then here is where I want to transfer this code. I'll transfer the whole thing. Then for ease of work, I'm just copy pasting as it is required. So I've transferred the code here completely. Now, if you create an external file, if you create an external file in PHP, you can have that file accessible in another location by using what we call PHP include. You can have other files here by using PHP include. And the way this works is you simply say include. I hope I can remember that. Include, then you mention the path where that file is located. Now, our file is located in a folder, admin, and the file name is connection. Connection.php. Now, when you see this, the point I want you to remember here is this. Anytime you see the word include, just know it's a way of a PHP saying this file is supposed to be added into this location. Let's see whether it will work. And so that I can know whether it works, I'll make a mistake here. I'll call it localhosts because I know that is wrong. Then I'll go back to my code and reload. So here it's saying, it is saying localhosts. No such host is known. So it means that actually it can detect that file. I'll remove that S and save the changes, then go back. If I reload, It's now working and it's saying connection is successful. Now, because I don't want to always be seeing that line, I will just comment this line out. I don't want to be seeing that line which is saying connection is successful, because I know my connection is truly working. Now, the point to get up to this is, in PHP, you can have a file created on its own, which is a pure PHP file. And if you want to use it, the only thing you need to do is just type include. Like a good practice we do in this code is, some shared files are usually created separately. The only way you use them is just by typing an include statement. A similar statement to include is require. A similar statement to include is require. They look the same. Yeah? Just observe. They look the same. I'll comment these out. Commenting, like I had mentioned in our last class, we do that if we don't want a certain line to be used by the interpreter. So I've commented that out. If I go and reload, it will still work normally. If I make a mistake deliberately here on this, I'll make a mistake here, save the changes, then go and reload. I'm supposed to get an error. You can see? So when you're looking at PHP script, there are some statements which will make sense to you by now. If you see either include or require, just know they are simply saying there is a file in a folder named this, and the file is called this. We need to have it added at this location. So there's no difference between this and what I had created earlier for the demonstration. So up to there, what I've been showing is simply how to connect a PHP script with either HTML, mostly with another, maybe in this case, a form. If you want now your application to be able to insert, you have to look at a topic in, sorry, let me change that. The error is still there. So now it's okay. So if you want now to insert data from, let's say here, you want to insert data from here and insert it into this table. The first thing you need to do is what we have just done so far. Ensure that there is a connection between your script and the database by name. Our database is called PHP form demo. So that is the database. Now, inside that database, we have a table, and that is where actual data insertion happens. So still using this website, I've gone to the first part where we saw the connection. I talked about creating a database. There's something like that. We also have a creating a table. We have something like that. What I want to go straight is insert. Now, to insert data into a database, usually very straightforward. Like I'll say, the first part is connection. We have already done that. Now, for you to insert, we usually use PHP. We usually use a PHP script to assist in the insertion. And the PHP script is usually combined with some SQL statements. I'll come back to the SQL statements in a moment. So I'm copying this again. Just remember that. So the first part we have already done. So I'm going to the second one. Now again, the script can be anywhere. I can decide to add it here. Just show you how PHP makes our work very easy. I can add it here, or I can even add it here. In fact, even in some instances, we add it below there. Usually add it even at the bottom of your code for whatever reason you wanted it. So here, it's simply saying, now what you do, the first statement here is a variable. I'm reading from line 8. This is a variable, which is holding some lines. As you can see, the line here is inside some quotation marks. Inside some quotation mark. Whatever is inside the quotation mark is treated as text. Now, inside the quotation mark, we have a statement which says insert into. So insert into is an SQL statement, which simply does what it's saying. It's simply saying insert into. Whatever follows after the word into is a database table name. Our database table here is called reg form. So I'll type that name there. insert into reg form, then whatever follows after that again is your own name. So you specify this, this, and this. This is supposed to be data from, or actually this is supposed to be the exact name you have in your columns. You can see these columns here in the table. So inside the table registration form, we have several columns. The first column is F name, the second one is M name, and the last one is L name. So they have to be the same. So mine is supposed to be F name. There's the underscore. So as I'm reading, I tend to ignore the underscore. Then we have the L name. Then here we have, so actually this one should be M name. Then the last one should be L name. Now, if you type them like this, the column names, also the data here should be in that order. So let me just pick a random name. So I've picked some random name there for just the demonstration. Now, right now, if I run this file as it is, oh, sorry, this one, also I've done the line 8, yeah? Line 8, I believe we can clearly understood what I've shown there. So here is simply saying, insert into a table with the name registration form. Yeah? So this is the name of the table. Then you open a bracket and the bracket is closed here. So what you type inside the bracket are the column names. The column names, like I've said in our case, our column names are there. Then what follows after that is values. Values is simply the data which is supposed to go to the specific column. Then whatever you have here is transferred into another PHP function called my SQLi query. So this one is supposed to run this query. But for it to run successfully, it needs to have connected. So whatever is usually put here is your connection variable. And our connection variable was called con. So I'll need to rename this from link to con. Then this is this variable I've created above here. Then also here, I need to rename this to con. Then also, I have to close the connection here at the end. So this one also is con. Now, right now, let me see, it's returning, there's an error here. Oh, sure, there's a semicolon I have not added above there. That's what's returning that error. So here, I have the registration form where I want to insert this data with some of this fake information. Now, right now, my data is being added on its own. So if I save these changes and I go and reload, I expect to get some communication, either records inserted successfully or these other one. Let's see what will happen. Go back there. I'll reload. It's saying records inserted successfully. If I go back to this and reload, just watch. Now I have it's saying one table, and this is the table. If I click on the table, and if the table has data, I'm supposed to see the data. The data is here. It's Peter Parker John. You can see that. Yeah? Now, in a normal website, we usually don't type the insert statement like this. Yeah, we usually get these values from a form. Usually get those values from a form, and it's a bit straightforward based on how you've structured your application. So the data was supposed to come from a form. I don't know whether we have an error up to that. Sorry, we have a question after that. Any question? So up to there, I'm trying to answer a question, which yes, Apana.
May you please share your VS Code.
This one?
Oh, I'm seeing the, okay, yeah, I see it, thank you.
Okay, so I'm asking, is there a question so far? Now, what I'm trying to do is to answer a question which was raised by a number of you, in that you've already created your website, but there's some functionality which probably you need to add. For example, one of that functionality can be a user can register, or a user can log in, or even you want to understand, now you are dealing with OpenCat. How is OpenCat really storing, how is OpenCat really operating? So OpenCat, for example, actually, the way OpenCat works is when you are setting it up for the first time, there's some data which it inserts for you. And that data is inserted in the same area. So if you explore OpenCat properly, you find that there are those scripts which are used to insert the data. The only thing I've noticed about OpenCat is, because I've gone through it as I'm preparing for this course, is it is using advanced topic in PHP called PHP object-oriented programming, where most of the files are using the OOP structure instead of what we are dealing here with here is called structured organization. So if you are dealing with any of those, you'll understand if I want to insert data, I need first of all to have a connection. That's a must. So you can't even OpenCat has a connection. I'm sure for those of you who have explored it, you know that there is a connection from OpenCat. There's a certain connection to be able to connect the interface with the backend. Now, after that connection has been made, now it is you as the programmer to decide which part we want to be using, either to add data into my database, retrieve data from my database, and such. So the most popular way of adding data from a user interface, for example, a form, to a database is by using the insert script, but this time it uses a form. And that is why in my class or in this session, I decided to first of all concentrate just a form. The other ways we'll encounter maybe in future. So I'd like us to look at this form, maybe to have a clear understanding of what it is. This form has, this is a text box, this is a text box, and this is a text box. I'll ignore the others for now. That one I leave you for you to do some research on. So if there is a form being designed in either HTML or PHP, the form usually has some parts. The most popular, the one which we'll need to know is this one, the input type text. Then you need to remember these section of the form. This is an attribute of the form called name. Now, if you want to insert this data, more so from a text box appropriately, you need to know its name. We need to know its name. So the first one is called first name. The second one is called middle name. And the last one is called last name. These are the names. These are the names for the forms. And PHP will need to know this when it is doing the insertion. But for that to happen, we need to write a PHP script, which captures the data from here, before sending it to an insert script like this one. Yeah, like this one, then saving it in this method here, saving it into a table. Usually a very basic script when you understand it, and I like to demonstrate that as fast as possible. So I'll still use this website. I'll still use the website I recommended for a session. I believe I've shown insert, a very basic one. Now I want us to use form. I'll go to this part here, PHP form handling. Still I'm using this here, PHP form handling. PHP form handling is one of the topics here. I had seen it, I've skipped here, this one. So the form handling in PHP requires you to have some basic understanding of how a form is structured. Now, any form you create in HTML, I believe this was taught in a different class, has the opening form tag requires some attributes. One of such attribute, which was not in my form, is what we call the action attribute. Yeah, this one. And also another one, this is optional. The second one usually optional is post. But I'll copy both for this demonstration. And this one I'll delete for now. I'll delete that one. So action, whatever appears in the quotation for action, usually say is the location of your PHP script for processing the form. The location of your PHP script for processing the form. If you leave it blank like I've done, it is considered the script is located in the same location as the file or somewhere here in this file. Is considered that, yeah? So PHP will do that. Then method will determine, so method can either be post or get. If what you're doing is data insertion of a lot of information, we usually recommend post. Post is more secure, as you learn in your research, is more secure as compared to get. For this session, I'll just leave it as post. So it determines the method of data transmission. Is it being transmitted as a post request or as a get request? So any form, for it to be processed in PHP, you must have that structure. Then at the bottom, you must have a button. You must have a button, and that button should have a type. Type is actually what really determines what happens if a person clicks on that button. In most cases, the type is usually submit. Yeah. Submit means it's a button which when you click is supposed to send data either to the backend or something. So like if you look at this, you can see this, yeah. I'm using again the website. At the bottom, their button type is, there's a button here. There's a button type here which is submit for their design. So if a person clicks on that, it's supposed to send data. Now, the way we capture data which has been sent in PHP is by using some PHP variables, some known variables, which tend to capture data in form of an array. In our last class, we saw an array. I said an array is a variable which holds multiple information. Instead of holding only one data, it can hold a set of data. So the most popular of this is post, usually post. This one tends to be dependent on this method at the top here. So the method you put here determines the type of super global you are going to use. So to summarize what I've explained so far, we want to insert data from these three fields. So the first requirement, which is each of them must have a name. The second requirement is the form at the top should have an action, yeah, and a method. The method, in case we have chosen post, and at the bottom, there should be a button, which when clicked is the one which will act on this method. So one which will act on the method provided there, or it will send data to based on the action which was provided. So if you have that, now it means that you can code, you can add script for that form of insertion. So again, using the same website. So this was just an explanation of what each of these does. Let's see. Also, before we can go ahead and do some insertion, yeah? When you have created a form, let me just save that file and open it in the browser. So when you've created a form, like this one. I've saved it, then I'll go back to the browser. Is this one. If I click on register, if the user has not filled information here, I expect the application to tell me something like that. Let me show you seen that. Yeah? When I click on that, it says, please fill out this field. That one is called validation. Actually, it's recommended every form you create should be validated. So we have two ways of validating a form. Actually, there are several ways. Yeah? The ones I talk about are two. The first one is where you can use HTML5 for form validation. I'd like you to notice how my script is structured. If you're using HTML5 for form validation, if you expect a certain item cannot be omitted, a certain field cannot be left blank when a person is clicking on submit, we usually add an attribute called required. Let's observe on my code here, line 79 here. This is the first name. Size is 15, then at the end we have required. We have done that for each of them. Let me remove the required from this, then save the changes. I'd like you to notice this. If I go back there, let me reload. Oh, again, something I forgot to do. The script is still inserting data every time I reload. So let me disable the insert statement for now. I'll comment it out. I want to apply a comment for this, so that it doesn't keep on inserting every time I run that. So if I have this and I reload, then I come back here and register. Because our first name does not have the required field, it is not being highlighted and I'm not being told it is, I need to fill it. Yeah. So the required attribute in HTML is the one which makes it possible for you to specify that a certain field is required. That's the first method of, we call it form validation. The second method is where you can use PHP. You can use PHP, we call it the backend form validation. For a properly designed system, in most cases, we combine more than two methods of validation. So this website is showing that second method of validating a form using PHP. I'll not go through the details of it. You can go and try it later on your own. Simply showing the step by step, and there is an explanation here. There's an explanation of how to do form validation using PHP. For our class, you can use both, depending on which one you feel easier to work with. So I want to go to insert. So the option I need for inserting directly is not there. So I'll just Google here. I'll just search for PHP form. So I've just searched insert into DB form here. I'll go with the first one, which is Geeks for Geeks, that website. I'll go through this explanation now. You will notice everything I've explained except the insert part is already explained here. They say you need XAMPP, you need to have a form which has a form element, and the form needs to have an action. If you go through this, you need to have a database connection. You have already done that. Then after that, you will need to have an insert query, or you'll have a place where you'll be inserting. But if you are getting the data from the form, it's showing that here. In this website, there's a place it's showing if you are getting the data from a form, there is something small you might need to change. So the first one is what we have done so far. The second one here is what I'm trying to demonstrate now, where you have to get data from the form. You have to get data from the form. Like I had said earlier, the form has a first name, middle name, and last name. That is now how you capture the data. So the way you do that is by writing variables to collect that data. You write a variable to collect that data. And now this data can be, let me just copy paste it, then I explain it to you. Yeah, copy this. Like I had mentioned, this file or the form handling can be in the same location or in a different location. For my code, I'll add it, show you that you can add PHP in here. I'll add it at the bottom here. I've added it after the closing of HTML tag here. Then this is what I've said. If then, so this simply means if a person has tried to post. So this simply means somebody has clicked on the button. What should happen? So what is happening here on line 134 in my code? The first thing is we create a variable which is supposed to hold data. It's supposed to hold the data from the, which is supposed to hold data from the submit form. Then if there is no data, you go ahead and return an error. Let's try this with one of these items. We'll try this with first name. So what goes, let me see. What goes into this square bracket here? And so that you don't get confused, let me change this to I've changed this to post so that you can get the idea of if you're using post here as the method, if you're using post here as the method, what you capture here is a post input. Now, whatever goes into this square bracket here is supposed to be the name. Is supposed to be the name of the text box where your data is coming from. For example, first name. So this one should be, let's say the name like first name. Now you can do this for all of them. Let me repeat this. I'll call the second one data 1, the second one, the third one I'll call data 2. Then this one will be, what was the second name there? Middle name, then last name. Middle name, then last name. So this information is the name, whatever is provided here as name. Now remember what we've done up to this is we are simply saying if somebody submits or clicks on the post, we expect to get data from first name, data from middle name, and data from last name. And before I can decide to insert it into the database, let me just display it on the screen first. So I'm displaying data 1, data 2. So I'm displaying data from these variables. So let's see. I've saved the changes. Then I'll go back to the browser. In case you have a question, please feel free to ask. So I'll type here, let's say, I'll type some gibberish from the keyboard. Because it's not going anywhere. So I've typed this, and this, yeah. Then I'll go down here and click on register. Oh, sorry, I'm just seeing the issue I have there. A number of other fields here are required. So I'll comment them out from our code. Some of these are not that necessary. Let's say from here. If I comment them out, they'll stop being displayed on the screen. I'll need the button, so I have to leave it out like this. So I'll reload. The data is already there. So the rest have already been removed. Something here. It's being displayed. It's not supposed to be. Oh, sure. Just one moment. There's some code which is appearing the other side, which is not supposed to be. Oh, sure. There is that. So if I click on this, I expect to see this displayed somewhere here on the screen. Let's see. Yeah, it's appearing at the bottom here. So it means I'm capturing whatever I type here. Even if I typed like my real name, if I type that, I'm expecting to see the names here if I click on register, because that's actually what is happening. I'm able to capture this. So the point I want you to get up to that is whatever we are doing here is very basic. Yeah? You can capture data when a person clicks on a button. Yeah, you can capture data when a person clicks on a button. And because you want to control how our form behaves, is when a person clicks on that button, that's the only time we expect to insert the data into the actual database. So the method of insertion is something we've seen, and it's very easy, very straightforward. So I'll go and copy it. I'll not create this afresh. So I'll come back here. I'll copy this. I'll copy it there, up to there. And I'll add it here, down here. I'll remove the comments in a moment. Let me explain what I've done here. So we have seen that it is possible to capture this data. So why are we capturing the data? So we capture that data so that we can be able to insert it. So this is what we are going to do. We are going to insert this data into the registration form. We're going to insert that into the registration form as long as we have seen the data is correct. So then we capture that data is now in place of value, when we are typing actual names, we can type these variables. In place of typing an actual name, we can type a variable. So here, I'll type the first variable, there is data. Then I'll just duplicate it for the others, for data 1, data 2, and data 3. So this one will be data 1 and data 2. Now, let's understand. So this time now, I'm inserting into this form the first name, the middle name, and the last name, which is coming from data 1, sorry, data 1 and data 2. Those are the variables, they are following each other. So whatever I type into first name will be inserted into F name. Whatever I type into middle name will be added into M name, something like that. Let's see whether this will work. Let's see whether that will work in our application. So what I'll do is I've saved the changes. I'll go back into my form and reload it. Cancel. Actually, let me do this in a different way. Then now reload. I've reloaded it. Then now I'll type my actual name. So I expect whatever I'll type here will be inserted. Will be inserted into the actual database. So the database is this one. Let's first of all check what data we have. I know we have several because there are some which were inserting when I was reloading. Yeah, so we have two here. Yeah? We have two details there. So I want to see whether my actual details will be added here when I click on the submit. So here I'll just click on register. So I've already typed the information, so I'll just click on register. Now it has returned an error. It is saying unknown column in, let me see. These are common errors, so sometimes you have to get used to troubleshooting. It's actually detecting my name as a column name. Let me see where I've gone wrong. So values supposed to be. So it's detecting my first name as a column. Now, this is like I was saying earlier, this is a very basic way of doing this. That's the first demonstration, which will build up to taking this to the advanced level. We have a different way of doing this, which I'll demonstrate later. Let me try and reload. I don't know whether it's something I've done from there. Just a moment. Yeah, actually it has worked. So I was omitting the quotation marks. Let's see. Sure, the details are here. So the point I want you to get there is how most applications really work. It's simply, there's a sorry, I got disconnected there. So I was saying this is one of the ways of doing that insertion. As you keep on researching, you find that we have different ways of capturing this information before it is inserted. But this is the most basic way and expected of us to know. If you start breaking down, or in this case, analyzing code done by other developers, everything I've shown there will always be there. So the final part of my demonstration is anything already added into a database, or anything which exists in a database can be displayed back to the users. For example, let's say you go to the Jumia website and I'm selling a product. The way I sell, if a seller wants you to say something, they usually go to their backend, the backend for their website, and they upload the details for the product they are selling. Then you as the customer are able to see it. How does that happen? So in PHP, we also have what we call a select statement. We have a select statement, which makes it possible for data to be shown on the screen when it was already stored in a database. Like let's say, we already know this. I have these names which I've added here. If I want to see them on the screen, I can just run a basic select statement. And the way it is done is it follows a similar manner to what we have done so far. First is you establish a connection. Yeah. After you establish a connection, you run a select statement. Then that select statement, you now go ahead and display the information it returns to you. There are different ways of returning that information. One of them is by using a get statement. Another one can be just a basic SQL statement designed by you as the developer. So I want to do a very quick one where I will display these names on the page I've just designed. I'll display those names here in my HTML page, somewhere just above the form. I'll just create a div. Inside that div is where I'll be displaying that information. Now, like I said, the beauty with PHP is it can be added anywhere. The only thing you need to remember is how it is added. You can add it anywhere, anytime. Like I've done that right now. I've just added another PHP script inside this div I've created where I want to establish how to display the names I've selected. Now, the first thing, as you might discover, is you'll always need the connection script. It's already added at the top, so I'll not need to create it again. Yeah. So if I've created the connection, that is what I'll use for running a select statement. If I go back to the website, because I like you to have something later to reference, if I already have a website, the connection is the first thing. Up to here, you already have that. Then here, you create an SQL statement, which is supposed just to do a selection of data. And the SQL, I'll copy this again to save on time I have for typing. I'll copy up to that. Let me start from the comment. I'll explain the picture in a moment. And this is the last part I'm doing for demonstration. So this is what is happening here. So I'm writing, or the first part here is simply line 77. You can see my code. I'm creating a basic select statement, which is simply SQL select. So the basic select statement says this: select, whatever follows there is an asterisk, simply means all from, then you specify the table where you're getting your information from. We all know the table I'm using now. So persons is wrong. Yeah? So the table name was, where was my insert statement at the bottom? So my table name was insert into this form. This is the form. This is the table name. I had forgotten it. As you know, I'm making this up as we go. So this is supposed to be where I'm getting my data from. So I'm simply selecting everything from. So the asterisk means everything in a select statement. Select everything from this form. So that is the first line. So after I select, yes, Andrew.
Okay. I don't know if this is just from me. So you're moving too quick. And then you're showing us what you're doing. We're not like, okay, for me, actually, I'm not understanding, to be honest.
Oh, sure. I'll guide you briefly. Anybody else are also struggling to understand that? So I'm doing this in bits. Yeah? So the first bit, just to show you in steps what we do. Yeah. So the first thing I was trying to achieve on this, yeah, I was trying to show you how to connect a PHP script to a database. I did that clearly, where I showed how to create this script. That was the first part, yeah. After we did that, I moved to the second part, which is showing that you can use PHP to add data into a form. That was the second part, to insert data into a form. I said, from a script into a database. I showed that you can type it directly, or you can get it from a form. And in this final part, I'm showing how you can retrieve data. Right, like right now, I have data in my database, which we saw how I added it there. Now I want to show this data onto a website I've created. In this case, it is this page. I want to show it on this page. So to ensure that I'm able to do this, I said I'll be using this website. It has the explanation. If maybe you want to understand better PHP, you can come and read the explanation from this website. I recommend it, which is Tutorial Republic. They have a clear explanation. So what I want to show you now is, if you have a database which contains data, how can you retrieve it and show it in your website? I gave that example of, let's say, Jumia. Today, if Jumia is selling something, that information is truly coming from a database. You only see information which is being retrieved. And I wanted to show you in this code how to retrieve that data. So that's what I started with. I had explained this. Yeah? The first part is you make a connection. If you are following from the word go, I said to create a connection script, this is the method you follow. So that's something I showed you as we are starting. So I don't have to show connection again. So the connection is already established. The connection is between this page, yeah, this page, I had added it at the top here, this page, and this database. This database, yeah. The database, we call it PHP form demo. Then, when we establish that connection, now we need to retrieve data from a form inside that database. And that's where I am now, where I've added this script section here, where it is simply saying we are selecting from, because the connection is already established, we are selecting from this table. The English word is straightforward, simply saying selecting from. So this, what you need to know is this is the name of a table in this database. Then, if you make this selection, this actually SQL will do this for you. It will select everything. We say the asterisk there stands for everything. It will select everything from that form. Now, the way we do is, after this has been selected, you have to know how to handle it for your code. In one of our classes, I said one place we'll see the application of an array is when you are dealing with data from a database. So this information usually retrieved from an array. So let me explain this part down which follows. So here we are creating an if statement. We learned about if statements. We are simply saying if. So these are variable name. The name here can be anything. The creator of this code decided to call it result because surely it is a result. So if, then here we are simply saying if there are some results from, now this is a PHP function. It's a standard. So this one, you just need to remember it the way it is. It's a standard one. So this one is supposed to run an SQL query. And it's supposed to run an SQL query for the connection script. So this is not supposed to be link for the connection script and this script here. So the SQL is this second one here, and the connection script is what we have created here. So if there is a connection, it will proceed and will go ahead and run the SQL statement. If there is an error, it will return the error. Then, so this is the first part of simply ensuring that the connection is successful for it to run that. So in that, we are adding another line, which is line 80. So line 80 here is simply where we are trying to now go through these results. So here we are saying if there are, so this is another function you need to know in PHP. I leave you later to go and read about this on the PHP website. They have explained what it's used for. So this one is simply saying if, you see this first part is a select statement. So if as rows, so if this query is able to run and has some rows, here we're saying it's greater than 0. So it simply means if there are some rows of information, then do the following. Whatever follows inside the curly bracket, like we are saying, echo. Here is simply, so the echo statement should be something very clear for most of us. So let me remove this first. Yes, Lona.
Okay, so I understood everything until the select. What exactly are we selecting, or what's the select option?
Data from the database table. Like the names have already inserted so far. Mm-hmm. So the asterisk means everything. So we are selecting everything from the table. And in this case, it is the data I've inserted here. So we have these names. We have these 3 names here, is what I'm selecting. In a normal website, the data varies. It can be product you're selling, can be people have already registered for your website and such. So the process of selecting always is the same. So we are simply getting all the data stored in this table. Then when it is taken now, we take it through this process. The first part is where we are checking the connection and running the select statement. Yeah, line 79. Then line 80 is checking that whatever was retrieved is greater than 0. In other words, there is the same data. So if it is less than 0, it means that whatever was returned there was no data. So if that is successful, here we are going ahead and creating a table. I like to change this from being a table just for a quick demonstration. So I'll remove that. Let me remove that so that I can make it clearer before I go ahead and start adding a table. Just a moment, I'm transferring that to a different file. So I think refactoring this might take long that I was expecting. So let me remove some of the unnecessary content here. Then I just explain it is as it is. So here, what is being created here is an HTML table. So an HTML table usually has a row, yeah, usually has a row, and each row contains data. The data can be just normal data or the heading data. So let me remove the while loop up to them. Now, if I save this as it is and go back to the browser, I'm supposed to see only some headings at the top. Sorry. Oh, sorry. You can see where that is. So I've gotten an error. It is saying undefined variable link on line 100. So this one should be my connection variable, and also this should be my connection variable. So this is what I was expecting to see, just to see some columns, first name, last name, and email. Let me explain how that is being done here. So here we are simply saying, if there is some data, echo, we had seen echo is used to display content. So you echo, you create a table row, and you create a table data, which has an heading, for first name, last name, and this one should be, so this should be middle name. Then this should be middle name. So we have first name, middle name, and last name. So this is simply data. Now, this can be anything, two types, whatever you want there. Now, if you want to now capture the actual information from this, you have to capture it by using a loop. You have to use a loop which captures this data in form of the way the column names are written in your database. So my column name is F name, M name, and L name. Now that loop is supposed to put that information inside this quote. F name, L name. Was that the structure? Okay, it should be M name, then L name. So it's supposed to capture this information. So whatever we have in the while loop, again, this while loop structure is usually the same. The only thing which is varying here is simply, we are creating a TR for every result and a TD, which is holding F name, M name, and L name. Now, if I save this as it is, I expect to get this information on my data. This information should be displayed in the order as it is shown there. So let's see whether that is what will happen. It has returned some error, and I can guess the issue. It's simply the spelling for one column. It's saying undefined array key M name. Let's see. This, according to the way I've stored it in my database, there is one letter which is capital, the N. So it should be N here should be capital. And I think that's where the error is coming from. Let's see. It is also L name. Let me see whether this name is okay. Yeah, L name, also the N is capital. Then I'll go back and reload. So now it is retrieving those details as they appear. If you look at this from, I'll right click and inspect, or show views, view source. You'll notice what we have, the name, or showing the names is simply a table. It's simply a table, and it is this one here on line 57, which was created by this loop. From here, that is the table which is being created. Now, the whole point of this demonstration was to show you how a functional website really works with the backend. So there's the database, yeah? So a database must hold information. When there is some information held in a database, that information is what is used for some things. For example, to display some information, like here, I'm able to display these names because they are already in this database. It's common for an e-commerce website. Information you tend to see there comes from an existing database. It is you to know which database that is. That database tends to have tables, different tables by name. Now, this data can be added in several ways. The most popular way of adding data here is by using a form. I've shown you how to insert data using a form. So the most common method of inserting data there is using a form. I've shown you how that is done, at least the basic way. As you keep on advancing in your research, you'll find that there are other advanced ways of inserting data other than just a PHP. Then finally, I've shown you how to retrieve the data. So in summary, then for you to retrieve data, use what we call an SQL select statement. For you to insert data, you use an SQL insert statement. It's at the bottom here. We use an SQL insert statement, this one. Now, if you're working with maybe a registration form, you will discover that you might need some additional data. So this one I leave you to read more on from this website. There is something in PHP called sessions and cookies. Should be talked about somewhere here. Yeah, these two, sessions and cookies. Those ones are the ones which are used to help the browser remember that a person has logged in, or to ensure that a person remains logged in when they log into your website. Yes, that is.
Sir, I wanted to ask that what you just showed us about the forms right now.
Yes.
Is it necessary to have it backed up for the assignment, or it's not a must?
So you remember that your assignment is more of, it is you're trying to show a product, a website product for Huawei. So what products will you want to show for this Huawei? So if you want to show that a person can log in, you'll need to show how a person logs in. So if you want to show that a person can register, you need to show how that registers. So it is how you are explaining your assignment what will determine whether that is necessary. So I will recommend we have at least one registration and login form for the Huawei products.
Okay.
Yeah. So I can see Lorna was asking the selector. So I believe, Lorna, you've understood what I had added there for select. It's an SQL statement for retrieving information from the database. Yes, Collins?
Could you send the code you just did to WhatsApp or the Zoom chat before you leave?
Let me share it on WhatsApp.
Okay.
Okay. I'll share it with everybody. Yeah? So I like to do a roll call, a quick one, before we can stop. So we can start with Haris. I had spoken to him. You there?
Yeah.
Amy?
I'm here.
Apollo? I'm calling based on the way that your names are appearing.
Yeah. I'm here.
CJ?
I'm here, sir.
Collins?
I'm here.
Andrew? We have Fami. So after I call you, feel free to leave. Yeah? Hamza?
I'm here.
Henry?
I'm here, sir.
Good. Naheem?
I'm here.
Good. David Mukasa.
I'm here.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, yeah, sure.
We have Tape.
I'm here, sir.
Then we have Lorna.
I'm here.
Jakes. Jakes.
Present.
Yeah, sure. Mandip. Mandip, are you there? Sheena?
Here.
Good. Anybody else who have not called? Mami, I had called you earlier.
Sir, I just have a question, sir.
Yeah, sure, go ahead.